Oh boy. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parsha class, Parshat Matot Masei. We finish, God willing, this week Sefer Bamidbar. Get into Sefer Devarim next week. Beautiful time to join the Parsha class and to learn the great lessons of the Holy Torah and its great commentaries. Let's begin with no further ado. It's basically this is the end of the story of the Jewish people in the Midbar. Sefer Devarim, as we'll see next week, is a recapitulation, a repetition from Moshe's perspective of everything that had gone on up to now. But this is basically it. This is the end. So there's a couple of stories here and there in these parshiot. It's more or less a few laws here and there, as we'll see, and we'll see how that works. Let's share the screen and share the source sheet that I sent out by email previously. Should look a little something like this. Great. All right, and let's get started. Great. So the parsha begins with Matot. It's called Matot are the tribes, and the reason for that name is because their heads, their leaders, were called upon to learn these laws of the vows. Now, vows are a complicated subject in Judaism. The different kinds of vows. There are vows of personal. There's vows. There's laws. There are vows of religious intent. In other words, let's say I make a vow to avoid a certain sin that I should be avoiding anyway. Then I get a double mitzvah, as it were, if I avoid that sin. For example, in general, vows are nowadays discouraged because there's people are just not as careful about what they say and how they deal with their everyday language. And vows are very, very specific about these kinds of things. So, without getting too much into the laws, though, let's get into the verse. Chapter 30, verses 2 and 3, Bet and Gimel. V'yidaber Moshe el Rashei Hamatot Livnei Yisrael lemor. Like I said, Moshe gathered and spoke to the heads, the leaders of the tribes of Bnei Israel, and he said, this is what Hashem commanded, Ish ki yidor neder LaHashem, o hishava shvua le'asor isar al nafsho, either a neder or a shvua, which are two different halachic concepts, the difference being between the item or the individual. In other words, I can say about a thing, say the screen, that, the screen shall be, I don't know, I'm not saying this, Billy Neder, but if I say something like, I'll dedicate the screen to the shul, right? I have to give it as a gift to the shul or to the Beit Hamikdash or something like that. So as opposed to a something that is related to the gavra, which is the individual. It's not about the screen. I dedicate a screen, and I'll have to bring a screen to the Beit Hamikdash, for instance, something like that. Okay, lesser isar al nafsho, to somehow make an isar to limit somehow on the person's soul. Lo yechel devaro k'chol hayotze mipiv yaseh. He cannot ignore his word. He has to do what he said. He has to actually fulfill his vow, and it's a major thing. You've created a 614th mitzvah. Basically, what you say as your vow now becomes obligatory. It's that serious. There are ways to get out of it. There are ways to annul a vow. There are things to do, but for all practical purposes, like I said before, we try to avoid this because we're not as careful as we ought to be with how we speak. Rashi on this verse, on the first verse, on chapter 30, verse 2, is concerned about the word zehadavar. We haven't had that word before. This is the word. This is the thing that Hashem commanded. This is the thing. Moshe doesn't speak like that. So Rashi says zehadavar, says Moshe nitna beko amar Hashem. Usually Moshe uses words like ko amar Hashem. Such is the way that God spoke, right? B'chatzot halayla, in the middle of the night. Hanavim nitnabu beko amar Hashem, and the other, sorry, yeah. Right, so he uses the words Ko Amar Hashem, and other Nevi'im, other prophets also say Nitnabu b'Ko Amar Hashem. Musaf Alehem Moshe Shnitnabu b'Lashon Zeh Hadavar. But Moshe is even greater than them because he can also use the words "This is the thing." Davar is a stronger form of amura, of speaking, right? So midaber is stronger. It's sometimes it's used as like as an aggressive sort of verb for speaking, as opposed to amor, which is a lighter, kinder, gentler sort of speech. So, without getting into the second shot of Rashi, let's stick with this for a moment. It's fascinating, really, that all of a sudden we have this phrase zehadavar. Now, this is not the only time. It's not the last time for sure, because all of Sefer Devarim is zehadavar. Elu hadivarim. Davar, it's same word. Dibur, Devarim, zehadavar. It's exact same shorish. It's that exact same root. So that sort of higher level prophecy is something we're going to see a lot of in the following parsha, which begs the question: why is this here? Why are we talking about Moshe's prophecy all of a sudden, Rashi? Why did you decide to pipe in? Because Rashi doesn't have a comment on every verse in the Torah. Why does Rashi feel the need to tell us why about Moshe's prophecy here? We're not the only ones who asked the question. As usual, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky in Emet Liakov asks the same question. He quotes this Rashi. He also adds, after quoting this Rashi, he says, V'gam, so I'm going to blow this up a little bit so it's easier for you to see. V'gam im lashon zeh hu madrega yoter gavoa. This, right? This is the thing. Not ko amar. Hashem said like this, ko, like so Hashem spoke. So did Hashem speak. No, this right here, something you can point at. This is the thing. Nirali, the me'emet matzinu, shenevi'e emet ein shnei nevi'im mitnabim b'signon echad. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that in 89a, that all Nevi'im speak in a different language, not different language like Hebrew versus Spanish versus Tagalog, right? What it means is different languages here means they use their own personal language. It comes from within them, the language. The idea comes from Hashem. They see some sort of image from Hashem in their prophecy, and then they have to then regurgitate it. Let's call it what it is in their own words. Right? They have to re-say it. Like, kind of like if you remember back in school, right? A teacher would tell you a lesson and sometimes say, "Okay, now tell it back to me in your own words." That the idea is now you have it sort of personalized. It's yours. And that's one of the ways that that false prophets can be found. Is that if they quote word for word another prophecy, that's how you know they're not real. A false prophet, a real prophet, has his own words that he's going to use, or her own words if it's an aviyah, right? They're not going to quote verbatim another person's prophecy word for word, because that would mean that they're actually false prophets. Something worth thinking about. Should be the other way around, right? The emed shekiblu mikor echad. They get the vision from the same source. Hayalahem lomar b'lashon echad. You think they should say it in the same language. And you would think, you might have thought that a false prophet would speak in their own words. So Rav Kamenetsky is explaining this Gemara now. He says, Be'emet, Chazal, according to the Gemara in Brachot 58, 1a, it says, Shekeshem, Shepartsune ha'adam enam domim zeh lezeh, because our thoughts, our dreams, our imaginations are different. Kach ein deotehem shavot. Our thoughts, our expression is different. Imke im nishama mishnei, nishma mishnei anashim eza davar al korcha shekol echad tzarich lomro v'lashon acher. If two people see one thing, these two people are going to both have a different perspective of what happened. They're going to have their own words to explain what happened. If they have the same words, right, that's how you know that they're false witnesses. Right? They've obviously contrived together. They've conspired to say the same words, to say the same story. Let's skip a little bit. Talking about poverty, and this is, he says, it's the same idea with somebody who's rich or poor. It's perspective. According to which standard are you using to say somebody's rich or somebody's poor? Im nishma me'ela bet hanashim malod shavot. That's how you know one is definitely false, if they both seem very, very accurately similar. And think about that. Consider that. We find regarding this now, Ishut Hanavi. Right, so a Navi sees something, sees a vision according to their own understanding, according to their own wisdom, according to how their day was until that happened, right? Masei enkein b'Moshe Rabbeinu, but that's different than Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Shemasar lanu et haTorah b'zeh hadavar. Moshe Rabbeinu could give us the Torah with the words, this is the thing, mamash. This is the exact thing. Shikabalto bli eze tatferet v'shioto hafrit ela hakadosh baruch hu medaber begrono shel Moshe. It's like Hashem spoke through Moshe's throat. Moshe's prophecy was that clear. There could be no other interpretations. There could be no other influences. Nothing else was happening to him that day that affected his nevuah. And that's very important. Why? Because Moshe's prophecy is the Torah itself, the 5 books of the Torah, which the Gemara sometimes can learn out halachot from an extra letter, an extra word, a word seemingly misapplied or misused. Different grammar. We don't do that with a Navi, with the other books of Tanakh. As holy as those words are, we can't learn out things from them in the same kind of way. And the Talmud never does. Because Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was Torah, it could not have any bit of influence, any bit of anything else. And that's why his prophecy is greater than any other prophet's. And that fits very nicely with the 13 principles of faith, where we say that one of the principles of faith is that we believe in Moshe and his Torah, and then we believe the next principle of faith is that we believe that the Torah is true. If Moshe, if the Nevuah isn't true, if there aren't prophets, and if Moshe isn't true, then why would the Torah be true? The Torah is only true if we believe that Moshe is true. If that Moshe was able to accurately surmise and summarize and explain to us exactly what Hashem needed us to not need. Hashem doesn't need anything. What we needed to hear from Hashem. Which is why, says Reb Yaakov here, which is why Rashi had to say this here of all places when we're talking about Nedarim. Hine, mi parshas Nedarim anu roin sheha'adam yesh b'kocho litzor ulechadesh mitzvot ve'eret chadashot. A man, a human being, a man or a woman who makes a vow has the power to create new mitzvot and averot just by the words that they use. So the words are that important. If he makes a vow that he's going to eat this thing, he's going to drink this cup of water, he has to do it. It becomes on the same level of eating and drinking like the mitzvah that the Torah has for all Jews to eat matzah on Pesach. V'kein kishibata shavua shelo ochal kvar zu harei kvar asura kikosher kibasar chazer v'yoter. And if he says, I'm not going to drink this, he has made a prohibition on himself equal to the prohibition against eating the flesh of swine, of eating a pig. Equal. He's created a mitzvah, he's created an avera with his words. That's how powerful words can be. So this is the exact place, this is the best place to talk about the power of Moshe's prophecy, where his words were superior to anybody else's. So powerful were his words that we can learn at halachot from them. He goes on and gives other examples. But that's exactly what he says. Torah mamash. The Torah came from his words, from his exact retelling of exactly what Hashem wanted him to say. From his throat came Hashem's words. Moshe Rabbeinu rak hichnis parshazu b'Torah Moshe. And it's important to know that this is why we have Moshe's prophecy right here. Rashi is explaining the greatness of Moshe's prophecy right here when we finally see the greatness and power of our words. All right, so let's keep going a little bit further. Next point in the parsha, and there are a lot of other points. There's an accounting made. The Jewish people are sent on a mission to attack the land of Midian. Midian had seduced the Jewish people at the end of Parshat Balak. And then we had Parshat Pinchas, where Pinchas was able to reduce the punishment of the Jewish people through his brave action. And then chapter 31, verse 6 tells us that Moshe was commanded to send to fight Midian. And he was told that once he does this, he is going to die. He is going to die. Now, this is in the praise of Moshe, because despite the fact that he was going to die immediately after this mitzvah of sending these soldiers, he does it immediately. As it says, chapter 31, verse 6, V'yishlach otam Moshe elef lamata litzava otam. He sent 1,000 soldiers from each tribe, Pinchas ben Elazar HaKohen, and Pinchas, the son of Elazar the Kohen, L'tzava uchlei kodesh v'chatzotzrot trua biyado, and he went. He had the chatzotzrot, he had the klei kodesh. They took the aron, and they took the trumpets, and they went to go battle against Midian. Rashi there says, so he sent them and Pinchas. What is the pasuk telling us? Magid. It's telling us Shaya Pinchas Shakul Neged Kulam. Pinchas was as important to us as all of them. That's why I had to mention Pinchas. It was like he sent 12,000 people, and Pinchas was equal to 12,000 people. All right, that's a midrash. Why did Pinchas go and not Elazar? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mi shehitchil b'mitzvah shehareg kasbi batzur yigmor. Whoever started the mitzvah, as we said before, Pinchas began the defense against Midian was started by Pinchas when he killed Cosby, and so since he started the job, he should finish it. Another opinion is that because he was going to get revenge for what happened to Yosef when Yosef was sold. Midianim or Midianim bought him. Minyan Shata Imo Shel Pinchas Mishal Yosef. So hold on. Sorry, that's not what I was looking for. That's not the Rashi I was looking for. Sorry, give me 1 second. That is not the Rashi I was looking for. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay. All right. The Rashi I'm looking for, I hope I find it and put it in the list here. Can't find it now. The Rashi points out that really, who was commanded to go to war? It was Moshe. So if Moshe is the one who's commanded to go to war, why didn't he? Right? Seems a little bit strange that he's the one who was commanded and he's the one who's not going to war. So why is he sending other people? He should be going to war, not Pinchas, not Elazar. So Sichot Musar says an amazing thing. Really, really an important concept in Torah. So he quotes here. There's a lot of this is an essay he wrote about Hakarat Tov, about gratitude. He says that we are all obligated to have Hakarat Tov, to have gratitude to people or things that have done good to us. So he says, Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom, we're on the top line here. Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom nitztava b'pirush meid HaKadosh Baruch Hu nikom nikmas b'nei Yisrael meid HaMidianim. So he's commanded to have revenge against Midian. That's probably where the Rashi would be, you would think. Yeah. I can't find it. Never mind. It might not be a Rashi, it might be a Yalkut. But either way, so anyway, he was commanded to attack Midian. Katuv achar kach v'yishlach otam Moshe. And then it says Moshe sent other people. And Yalkut shalu hazal in Yalkut, in the Midrash in Yalkut, the rabbis asked this question that we just brought up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omar LeMoshe Nikom Batzmecha, that Moshe was supposed to get vengeance himself. But who sholech acherim? He sent somebody else. He sent others. Al yidei shenid gadel b'Midian. But what you have to remember is that Moshe grew up in Midian. I don't know how old he was when this happened. Maybe he was 40. But remember, he ran away from Mitzrayim. And where did he go? He went to Midian. Amar, Einu bedin shani mietzer lemi shasa li tova. It's not right for me to get revenge against Midian if they did for me a kindness. They helped. I was raised there. I can't go and blow up my own neighborhoods, right? But this is a great wonder, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. Hare nitztave sheyinkom hu et nikma b'nei Yisrael b'Midian. He was the one who was commanded. What does it mean? He had, it's not right to do it. Moshe Rabbeinu, you're commanded. Hashem told you to do it. Eich dacha et mitzvat Hashem mipnei minhag derech eretz v'akarat hatov. How can he push away the mitzvah of Hashem because of derech eretz, because of hakarat hatov, because he has to have gratitude? He pushes away a mitzvah of Hashem. Hashem told him to do it. Yeah. Right? Al kain atatarech lifarish shechiv hakarat hatov mifarish mivara et davar Hashem. The includes hakarat hatov. There's an expectation of hakarat hatov, of gratitude. Amar Hashem nikmom nitparish, when it says Hashem says to get revenge, al yidei acherim, it means through others. It can't mean you get it yourself, because you have to have hakarat hatov for the Midianites that took care of you for those years that you were there. Vava pi yidei Shalula mida zu haita akavana kipshuto sheyinkom ma'atzmo dafka. It doesn't mean he has to do it himself. He knows that he has to get revenge, but he can't do it himself. Hashem wouldn't want that. Mikom makom la'achar shenitztavinu midat hakarat hatov. How could he then teach other people to have gratitude, a Torah concept, if he doesn't show it in this way? The Torah itself, the midot implied in the Torah, are an expectation of the Torah. This is an important Musar concept. He's the Rav Shmulevitz was the Mashkiach of the Mir, right? So Afkan anu dorshim nikom al yidei shliach. It has to be through a messenger. V'lo ki'atzmacha b'atzmacha ki einu b'din sh'ani meitzer l'mi she'asa li tova. It can't be part of the law that I should hurt somebody who did for me a kindness. He gives other examples of this. The first three makot in Mitzrayim that Moshe did not perform because all of the things that were involved in them somehow did him kindness, whether it was the water of the Nile that carried his teva, his basket when he was a baby, or the earth of Mitzrayim that covered up his Egyptian victim who was hurting the Jew that he killed, right? So in all of these cases, those first, that Rashi tells us, those are reasons why Aaron did those first three of the plagues, because Moshe had to have hakarat hatov. And he gives other examples about how this idea of how hakarat hatov plays into a lot of concepts in the Torah, this having gratitude. And keep in mind, by the way, that we're having hakarat hatov, right, in the last example for inanimate objects. No, not the river, not the dirt. They don't really care if Moshe Rabbeinu is safe or doing well, right? It's not that they did anything out of the ordinary for him, he quotes a famous saying of the Midrash of not throwing dirt, right? Not throwing dirt into the well from which you drank, right? We should have more hakarat tov than that. It's just a beautiful idea, I think, that of having gratitude, even if you're not getting anything from your source now, right? It was a long time ago. Midian for Moshe was ages ago, right? Since he's been for the last 40 years he's been rescuing the Jewish people from Mitzrayim. He hasn't been in Midian for quite a while, and yet for something where he's commanded to attack them, he knows that that command cannot include him to do that. That just wouldn't fit with the way Hashem wants things to be done, with good midot and with concern for others. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. Right. And we get to, we're still in Parshat Matot. Last comment that I have tonight for Matot, before we get to Masei, comes from Rav Zalman Sorotzkin in his Naim Torah. It's an interesting thing that one of the last stories in Matot is where the tribes of Reuven and Gad ask to receive their inheritance instead of in Israel. They want to be on the other side of the Jordan, in the land of Gilad. So they come and they ask for this, and then Moshe says, on one condition you can do. There's a whole back and forth, but eventually Moshe says, on one condition, if you go and you do battle with the Jewish people and don't dishearten them, and then you come back, you can have this land. And he adds these words, chapter 32, verse 22, and that's when the land is calmed down. In other words, when the Jewish people are successful in pushing out the Canaanim, and they're good and settled, then when you can come back, because you'll be clean, you'll be innocent in the eyes of Hashem and the Jewish people. And then this land will be your inheritance before Hashem. Beautiful. Only one problem, says Rab Zalman Sorotzkin. Look at these words carefully. In front of whom are you going to be innocent? Nikim me Hashem Yisrael. In the eyes of Hashem, right? And in the eyes of the Jewish people. And isn't that a given? If I'm innocent, if I'm a good guy, according to Hashem, doesn't that mean by implication that the rest of the people will find me innocent as well? So says Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, not necessarily. Yesh v'nidma lanu she'anaki me'Hashem habochen lev v'kalayot b'vadeh shehu naki miYisrael. You would think that somebody who has been judged and has been found innocent by Hashem should be found innocent and good in front of the people. Aval ein hadavar kain. That's not how things are, unfortunately. Why? Ki b'nei ha'adam chashadnim heima. They have chashad. They have concern. They have critiques, and they have suspicions. That's the word I'm looking for. Suspicions about others. Shehakina v'hasina v'zolat b'kalkelet et hashura. Jealousy and hatred messes up the proper approach. Umemela matilin hema. Minisivot shonot. The jealousy, they have hatred, and people are suspicious. Dovke afilu lapamim davka v'malache marom. Even the kings of the great kings. In other words, the Talmidei Chachamim, Even about them, there could be suspicions. Ve'ela shehem nikim be'enei Hashem. Are they really good? Is he really a good guy when he's all alone in his house? Is he as good as we think he is? As he pretends to be? As he dresses up? Right? V'atofa mistaeret hazot hu gedasha al yedei Moshe. And we see this even regarding Moshe. Ba'amru hayitem nikim me'Hashem b'hosafa umi Yisrael. Moshe recognized this, and he himself says, not just before people, so not just before Hashem should be innocent, you also need to be innocent in the eyes of people. By the way, the Gemara not so long ago in the Daf Yomi brings up that in the time of the Shloshet Yemei Hagbala, no, was that it? During the inauguration of the mission, Moshe Rabbeinu served as the Kohen Gadol. And what did he wear? Says the Gemara, he wore all white with no pockets. Why no pockets? So nobody should suspect him of putting things in his pocket. What is Moshe Rabbeinu going to put in his pocket? What are people suspicious of? This is Moshe Rabbeinu, who didn't collect gold when the Jewish people were collecting gold from the Egyptians after the splitting of the sea. Who was not going around and collecting things when the Jewish people were collecting things from the Egyptians during the plague of darkness, after the plague of darkness, before they left Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu, who's been carrying the Aron, the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik, who's given up everything for the Jewish people. The Jewish people were suspicious of him? Yes. We have to always, the people who are, especially in leadership positions, need to always be far above suspicion. Any kind of possibility of them doing something wrong needs to be totally avoided. And if they think that there's any kind of suspicion, they need to address it and go to the source directly and take care of it. Because believe it or not, this is a truth that has not gone away in our history. Okay, let's get right into Parshat Masei. Parshat Masei begins with the words this is chapter 33, verse 1. Ela Masei b'nei Yisrael asher yatzu me'eretz Mitzrayim letzivotam biad Moshe ve'Aaron. And these are the travels of the Jewish people that they went from Mitzrayim in their groupings according to the rule in the hands. Okay, let's go with Safari's translation. In the charge of Moshe and Aaron. Rashi there says, he asks a question because now we're going to have a list. It's a long list. Very long aliyah. And when the two parshot are combined, like they are most years, including this year, it's the fourth aliyah, Revi, is quite long, 60-something psukim. It's the size of about half the size of most parshot. For example, it's one way to look at it. And it's it gets a little easier at some point because we're just listing off places that they traveled. But nevertheless, it's a lot of places, but it's not all the places. So Rashi asks the important question, Lama nichtavu ha'masot halalu? Why are these places listed? And so he says, L'hodia chasadav shel makom, to know the kindnesses of Hashem. Shaf al pi shegazar alehem v'taltalam v'ha'niyam b'midbar, that even though he decreed that they'd have to travel around in the wilderness. Lo tamashayu neyim etul talim masa kol arba shana v'ayta lahem menucha. They didn't travel all the time. They didn't travel every day. There were some places where they had the opportunity to sit and rest, to really settle for quite a while. Right, Shaharei Ein Kan El Arba'im Mishnayim Masaot. Semehem Yud Dalet Shekulam Hayu B'Shana Rishona Kodem Gzera. They traveled in 14 places just in the first year alone, right? Shemasu Miramses Ad Bao Ritma Misham Nishtalchu Meraglim. That's where they sent the Meraglim, and only after that, the Achar Nasu Ha'am Mechatserot. Only after they went to Mechatserot, that's when Shlach L'Chan Nashu. That's when they sent the spies, the Kan Hu Omer, the Yusu Mechatserot, the Achanu Veritma. Right. Rabbi Moshe. So that's a concept that he learned from Rabbi Moshe Darshan. That all of these places were places where they went, and this shows how kind Hashem was to not schlep them around too much in those 40 years. Rabbi Tanchuma Darash Bo Drash Acheret. Rabbi Tanchuma, the Midrash Tanchuma, gives another explanation. Mashal lemelech shaya b'no cholev holicho lemakom rechok rapoto. A king had a son who was very sick. They went to a very distant land to heal the son. Kivan shayu chozrim hitchil. Second. Aviv Mona Kol Masaot. And then when they went back, the father said to his son about every place, Amarlu Kan Yashanu, here we slept, Kan Hukarnu, here you rested, Kan Chashashta et Roshecha, here you rested your head, right? So Hukarnu, you felt cold, and we rested your head. So each place has their own memory and has their own lesson to be learned. And that's the idea. Says Rav Schwab in Mayan Beit HaShoeva. It's a long piece. We're not going to quote all of it. But he has a question. How does that answer Rashi's question? Okay, Rashi's question was, why are we listing these places? It's not all the places. So especially that second answer is kind of problematic. Because that second answer is, as we go back, as we go make a list of all the places we went, the father tells the son, here you rested, here you were cold, there you put down your head. How does that answer the question of why these particular places are listed? Says Rav Schwab, "V'hevin divrei chachamim v'chidutam she'amru davka b'mashal kan yishanu kan hukarnu kan chashashta et reshecha nira she'hakodem ma sheyesh l'dakdik b'seder hamasod medaleg al ha'maorot hagdolot shel klal Yisrael kagon kriyat yamsuf v'horat haman." It doesn't list all the places. It doesn't mention the kriyat yamsuf. It doesn't mention where we got the man. The Nes Shel Mara, Matan Torah. We don't talk about the giving of the Torah, Havin, Mishkan, the Od. There's a lot of things you don't mention. Devarim Asher Lechora, Nirim, Ke'enam, Akriyan. So other things we do mention. It doesn't make sense. Mitzrayim, Mekabrim. We left Mitzrayim when they were burying people. What's the point? Why some things yes, some things no? So he says, and again, this is a long piece, but just to get a taste of it. V'nira delo ba'al imnot el hamorot shel b'nei Yisrael misaham el sheba le'ayir davka al hamakomot asher hayu roi l'klal Yisrael le'yit'ora behem v'lo nit'oraru. They're only listing the places where the Jewish people should have learned a lesson that they didn't learn. These lessons are lessons that they can learn now. We can learn now. The Torah is alive. We're learning the Torah. We're hearing the Torah just like the Jewish people did. And we hear these places. We can learn out lessons from these places. What are the lessons? And that's why this is a long piece, as I've been saying, because the Midrash gets right into it. Kedivra Midrash, Mana Lahem, Kol Makomod Haven, because Yisuni, these are all places where a lot of these places they angered Hashem. Hainu Kan Yeshanu. Here we slept. Lo Chatzinu Bitkavonon Benisa Hashem. What does it mean? We slept. These are places where we missed the boat, as we would say nowadays. We slept on it, right? When we had the opportunity to learn a lesson or really appreciate Hashem's miracle, we blew it off. We slept on it. Kanu, here's where we're cold. Nitrashal, Nitkarer, Atzlam. We made ourselves cold, emotionally frigid. We still have that expression, right? To be cold to somebody, to be cold to something, to not be heated up and energized, excited by something. That's what happened in those places. Kan hashashta haroshacha. That's where we rested our heads. Kishna avdu bahem rui b'nei Yisrael nisharu bli rosh. We went like we had no head at all. Rak el hadvarim mona v'holech be'emtza hamasaot. So these are all places where these kinds of things happen. In other words, this is not a complimentary list of places where we went. This is a travelogue. This is not Hashem showing clicking through his slides to show us where we went while we were in the midbar. These are all places where we didn't learn a lesson. These are all places where we had opportunities that we blew. We flung them. We punted them away, parried them. Use whatever expression you want. And all of these three kinds of categories that Rashi brings from Tanchuma. So Rav Schwab says all of these three categories, these are what the things that these places are reminiscent of. These are not all the places we went. These are just the places where we didn't pay attention. Just to give you an example, one of the places is in regard to Mitzrayim, right? Because it says regarding Mitzrayim that we left Mitzrayim when they were burying their dead. Now, if the Jews would have thought about it for just a few moments, they would have realized that there's something very unique about the Egyptians burying their dead. That's not what Egyptians do. Egyptians don't bury their dead; they mummify them. They keep hold of them. But even the Egyptians dropped their avodah zarah for us. They realized their gods and their stupid religion and their ridiculous ideas and their avodah zarah and all of that meant nothing. And there's no point in this pretend afterlife with their gods and cats and everything else. They threw it all away and they started burying their dead. And we missed it. We missed this great opportunity to see how stupid their avodah zarah was. And maybe if we would have seen that, if we would have been paying more attention to that, maybe we'd have less avodah zarah in the midbar. Who knows? Maybe we wouldn't be involved with the golden calf. Who knows? Maybe we wouldn't have gotten into Baal Peor with the Midianite ladies. Who knows what kind of influence it would have been down the line if we would have opened our eyes to the world around us. That's what the world around us is for, even today. You open your eyes. If you know what's going on in the world, how can you not realize that there is a God in the world? Miracle after miracle after miracle. It's pointing in a certain direction. It's not like it's pointing in different directions. It's all pointing up. It's all pointing towards Hashem. So when we realize that, when we wake up, when we stop being emotionally cold, that's when we can maybe, hopefully, learn the lesson and take it to heart and not have to be reminded later about this. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. Chapter 35, verse 29. We are given, the Jewish people are given the lands that they will inherit. And part of the lands that they inherit are also Levite cities, and amongst them are also cities of refuge for accidental killers. We've spoken in previous years and previous parshiot about how that whole process works. But part of it is this weird phrase about the cities of refuge. Chapter 35, verse 29 says, "V'hayu eile lachem l'chukat mishpat l'dorotechem b'chol moshvotechem." This law about the cities of refuge, etc., these laws and accidental killing and everything, all of these laws are for all generations in all of your dwelling places. For all generations? All of our dwelling places? Oh, I don't remember, accidental killers nowadays running to a city of refuge. It didn't happen in my lifetime. What's happening? Are we not following the Torah? Says Rashi, B'chol moshvotechem, in all of your dwelling places. Limeid shitei Sanhedrin katana noheget b'chutz la'aretz kol zman shenoheget be'eretz Yisrael. Rashi quotes a Gemara Matot 7a that as long as there's the big Supreme Court in Israel, because it has muscle, it has power, as long as there's a court there, there has to be other courts outside of Israel as well. Wherever Jews live, B'kol, right, in all of their dwelling places, B'kol moshvotechem, and every moshav, every group of Jews, wherever they live, even if they're outside of Israel, needs to have a court with the muscle to be able to enforce law. That's what Rashi says. Implying, by the way, and the Gemara actually says this, implying that when there isn't a Sanhedrin, as there isn't now, unfortunately, so we don't have that same kind of power to deal with capital cases and such. We have to have a Beit Din, close enough that's useful, but we're not able to have a court that deals with the kinds of things that a court should be able to do when it has muscle. Says the Ramban. He quotes this Rashi very well. And then he says, Chen Hadavar, he says correctly, etc. And he quotes other sources for this idea. So far, so good. And then yeah, I'm trying to find it. Here we go. Then he says, even though Rashi's right about what he says, because he's quoting the Gemara, Rashi can't be wrong. But he says, "Avalo matati b'mitzvah shetalui b'zman shebeit habayit shema ba l'doratechem b'chol moshvotechem." However, he says, I don't see where this mitzvah is in any way based on the Beit Hamikdash or the Sanhedrin. Right? The Sanhedrin stood when the Beit Hamikdash stood. Now we don't have a Beit Hamikdash, we don't have a Sanhedrin, so now we can't enforce laws outside of Israel? Where does it say that in our verse? In all of your dwelling places, in all your generations. Even in Galut, even outside of Israel, when we're in exile. We still have the same obligations with regard to that we can't we have to rest on Shavuot, and that we have to we can't eat Chadash, during the Omer, sorry, before the Omer. All of these are still obligatory outside of Israel, even without the Beit HaMikdash, even without the Sanhedrin, excuse me. If that's the case, how are we supposed to enforce that? We should still, we still have to give the Omer or count the Omer. It's the same phrase in all your dwelling places is also used regarding using chalev, forbidden fats, which we also don't we don't eat the Beit HaMikdash. So it seems to be that although like I said, Rashi's not wrong, but Rashi's application to this idea of the Sanhedrin being connected to having courts, being connected to having a Beit HaMikdash, that doesn't seem to fit into the interpretation of our verse. So Ulai, he says, so maybe what the rabbis meant, if it's not what Rashi said, and he says it's not, him dorshim ela lachem lechukat mishpat al hasanhedrin niskar parshat Tamid. So when it says that this is going to be a decree of mishpat, of justice for your generations, that's where the whole idea of the Sanhedrin fits in. Shenemar lifnei ha'eda lemishpat. Shavtu ha'eda. There's all these concepts of the judgment, the congregation, and we know that the Eda refers to the Sanhedrin. Right? The congregation has to make these decisions. We always have to have an Eda. We always need to have a court even after the destruction of the temple. Ladun dine. One second. Ladun dine kanasot gzelot chavalot lo davar shebemamon shel malkud arbaim. We still need to have a court that's going to judge cases, non-capital cases, obviously. Still able to fine, still able to punish for injuries and for robbery and these kinds of things. And even give the punishment of the 40 lashes. It's still able to be done even without the Sanhedrin being in active. So according to Ramban, the only kind of muscle that the court does not have is capital cases, actually killing people. Otherwise, any other kind of punishment, the court should still be able to do, even outside of Israel, because there's no reason not to. And we see what the consequences are nowadays of not having that. Our courts, the only power they have is to put somebody into cherem, to say somebody's forbidden to go into, to get an aliyah. And what if the needs that person or disagrees with the court? Ignored. And that's a very unfortunate circumstance that we're dealing with very often nowadays. This is why there's even the concept of agunot nowadays, of women who are unable to get a divorce from their husband. It's because the court doesn't have the power that it used to have of enforcing, of physically forcing the man to comply with the laws of the Torah and the rabbis. Last piece, just real quick. I know we're a little bit over time. I apologize, but this is just a very beautiful piece from Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Now, you may or may not know this, but every single parsha of the Torah, I think maybe with one exception, I think we might have lost one of them, has anonymously somebody listed the amount of verses in each parsha, how many psukim there are in each parsha, and then also usually has like a sentence or so to teach a lesson about that particular number, just to sort of remember the number and to remember a certain lesson about the parsha. So I think the Stone Chumash makes a big deal. He uses, I think, Rav David Feinstein in his commentary to explain the different things. You can look at the end of any parsha. You can find a note that mentions in the Hebrew how many verses there are. So the verses in this particular sedra of Masei is Kuf Lamed Bet, 132, a little bit more than average. Combined with Matot, which is also larger than average, it makes for a very long parsha, which is why it's pretty much the longest combined parsha in the Torah. And it says, Bachla Chola Siman. It says, sorry, that's a misprint. Give me a second. I can fix that. So it seems to imply that machla, it depends on how you translate this, but chola means sick. It sounds like it's an illness. It doesn't sound very good. Yeah. Give me a second. There you go. But I had it here. There we go. Yeah. So this so the 132 verses, and machla chola seems to imply somebody has an illness. So says the Talmud Akra, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, b'minyan apsukim b'sof parsha ita kalev machla chola siman temu madua nakat siman ra. Usually these verses are, these mnemonic devices are positive. Here's sickness, illness, death. It's not a happy sound. Now you could say it has to do with the time of the year when this is read. It's always read during the 3 weeks right before Tisha B'Av. Okay, so maybe that, but he doesn't say that. He says Temu Madua Naka Siman Ra. He says Mifrat Shezeh Bisium Sefer Midbar. He says this is the end of Sefer Bamidbar. Amlam nira de ein hakavana lechole. We're translating it wrong. Chole here doesn't mean sick. Elahu melashon machul. Machul is a circle. Kiditnan v'yotzim cholot ukramim. Says in the Gemara Tanit that we can go around in circles. V'kai al hapasuk dechtiv b'sof a parsha. Well, you have to look at what happened at the end of the parsha. At the end of this parsha, it talks about how the daughters of Tzlavchad got married. They got married, right? All 5 of his daughters got married, and they inherited their father's land. Hainu machla gumer livnei didan nashim. They became wives to their cousins. V'hainu b'machla v'tirtza chulei. They danced in circles at their weddings. Machla is one of the names of his daughters. So Machla is in her chola, is dancing in her circle. It's a happy. It could be a happy translation of this verse. It's a beautiful idea that we can think positively about things. It doesn't have to always be negative. Even in this negative time, we can hope for a future when the Sanhedrin is active, and when people have hakarat hatov, and when people are able to listen to Moshe's Torah and understand the power of their own words. And when all of that happens, we'll have a much greater simcha, and we'll all be together dancing with the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meira v'yameinu. Thank you for joining me for the class, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for a nice class. Good night.
Thank you. Take care. Good seeing you.